Welcome back to Worldview. Now, here at our partner school, UWC Atlantic College, they hosted an environmental and sustainability conference back in March. And they had a number of global speakers come in and talk about the effects of global warming, climate change, the issue of fracking. Indeed, I was part of one of those panels, and it was really a very interesting whole campaign that went on for 2 or 3 days here. The students here filmed the entire conference, and together what you'll see in a moment or two is that they were able to put together a program which shows you in a nutshell what happened during the conference.
Is imperiled by the activities of people like Gerwyn and Oliver. And there'll be plenty of talk later on about the toxic chemicals that this industry wants to inject into the geological strata beneath our feet, and the hazardous waste that will squirt up for society to deal with. So I'm going to focus on the immorality of climate change. Unconventional gas has 2 principal effects on climate. Let's not forget that climate change is almost universally now regarded as the biggest challenge, the biggest threat that humanity has to deal with. So unconventional gas has 2 principles. Simply is not the emission space available in the time frame that we have to utilise shale gas. And a report for the UK government revealed that just 330 fracking wells could double the greenhouse gas emissions profile of the entire UK oil and gas sector. Secondly, it diverts investment from zero carbon and renewable technologies, which are the only technologies that are going to be powering the world in the future. So this is where we should be diverting all of our attention, all of our resources into focusing on this 100% renewably powered future. But unconventional gas draws that investment. Instead of going on to renewables, it diverts it to fossil fuel investment. But don't just take my word for it. Let's see what PricewaterhouseCoopers have to say about it. They say it reduces the investment, it reduces the incentive for investment in low carbon technologies such as renewables, and could lock in emerging economies with high energy demand to a dependence on fossil fuels.
Investments that are being made, and we can see that we know that the CO2 emissions globally will increase in the next 2 decades. In Europe, in North America, CO2 emissions will go down, but this will increase in the rest of the world, pulling up the global CO2 emissions increasing. Alarming. So all government efforts are needed, and also long-term investments are needed to go into renewables. But also, it's a matter of fact, we are dependent upon fossil fuel because there is no replacement that can take fossil fuel at the moment. So we need to look at investments that are being made, and we can see that we know that the CO2 emissions globally will increase in the next 2 decades. In Europe, in North America, CO2 emissions will go down, but this will increase in the rest of the world, pulling up the global CO2 emissions increasing. Alarming. So all government efforts are needed, and also long-term investments are needed to go into renewables. But also, it's a matter of fact, we are dependent upon fossil fuel because there is no replacement that can take fossil fuel production we have and make investments. Statsoil is putting a lot of money into carbon capture. We clean the gas so it doesn't go out in the environment. We inject it into the wells, so it's being stored in the reservoirs. And also, we are putting in efforts to produce wind and water and tidal power to expand our portfolio of renewables. Can we show this short video? because it summarizes some of the challenges that not Statoil only, but energy industry is facing. Oil.
Devonian shales. There are, in the very little more than you, there are Devonian measures that can produce conventional gas that doesn't need fracking. And there are deeper measures in the Silurian Ordovician shales that could produce very, very large amounts of gas for many, many years to come. There's more detail on the licenses, but we've taken some samples, we've drilled a number of wells, and we've had a company called RPS, which is a worldwide consultancy group, do some tests for us in the Gareth's office, and they came up with just under 50 trillion cubic feet for one part of the shales in one part of South Wales. And to put that in perspective, the UK uses something like 3.5 trillion cubic feet. We've also got a lot of coal still in South Wales, and there is gas in that coal, and the technology of getting that out is called coal bed methane. And as you can see, there is about 1.7 trillion cubic feet today of what we call a P50 prospective resource there. So we've drilled 6 wells. Oil production from shale was produced in 1851 in Scotland. The first gas was produced in 1895 in Sussex. And the first well to be hydraulically fractured in the UK was 50 years ago near Airdrie in Scotland. And today we have some 2,000 onshore wells in the UK. Of those 2,000 wells, about 200 have been hydraulically fractured. Why do we need shale gas? We need a bridging fuel. As I said, we cannot get from A to Z overnight. Ultimately, we're all aiming for the same end, and that is to get to an emission-free fuel. And we see that to be fueled by hydrogen. And so we could be at the North Sea oil and gas in 17 years, we're told. We're importing a lot of gas from Qatar mainly. We've an interconnector that gives us gas from Gazprom in Russia. There's a lot of power stations, or a number of power stations that closed in 2015, and power cuts, unfortunately, are inevitable if that generating capacity is not replaced. We know that gas prices are continually rising. In 2011, they rose 2%. And we know that the Welsh Government has made an announcement and said that 21,000 public sector jobs in Wales are to go. We have to have something to sell in this country to be able to make money. Otherwise, we've got to fund it ourselves. The way we fund it is by paying more and more taxes. You're going to hear a lot, I'm sure, about what's happened with fracking in the USA. And a lot of it is true. There's been a lot of chemicals used in the USA, and there has been some damage, and there's been water pollution in the USA, but this isn't the USA, it's the UK, and we govern differently to the USA. Or when we frack, because we will have to eventually, we will have to be totally transparent and declare all chemicals and all fluids that go into that frack mix. And that hasn't been required in the USA. The other thing I'd say with the USA is that there's been no baseline studies. So there's nothing to compare things to. If there is gas found in the water, or if there is gas seeping through the ground, in an area where fracking is taking place, nobody can say that that wasn't happening before, because no one has measured it before the operation started.
In our case, about 2 years ago, we had our sustainability contributing editor in the US come to us and say they wanted to write about fracking. And I said, well, we're not that kind of a publication. Didn't know what fracking was, had no idea what it meant. And then for 2 years, her articles had been coming on a fairly regular basis and literally scaring me and most people to death. As an editor and owner, of course, I had to make sure we wouldn't be sued. That was very important. And you can pretty much draw a party interest line down the middle of this debate. In the blue corner are the environmentalists, those willing to chain themselves to gates. They tend to be more on the Democratic or the Labour side. And in the red corner, we have the Tories and Republican interests willing to do anything to get money out of this particular venture. Now, if we look at the US states of Pennsylvania and New York, they share a border. But that's about all they share. The Pennsylvania legislature is completely controlled by the red corner, the Republican side. The New York state is controlled by the blue side. And just last week, they voted to postpone any fracking for another 2 years through the end of 2015, whereas also last week Pennsylvania voted to remove any remaining restrictions on gas and oil companies who wish to do this type of exploration. In New York, they had a series of health experts come in and look at the actual chemicals that come back up through these mines. And they found that, for example, in one it caused leukemia, in another it caused cancer in children, in another it caused thyroid cancer, and New York delayed it. They said, we cannot afford to take that chance. Yet Wednesday, on Budget Day, the Chancellor of the Exchequer came out and said, well, we're going to provide all kinds of tax to those who are going to embark upon this particular time. Anywhere in the world to hold up their hand and say, you know what, we made a mistake, here's how we plan to fix it. It isn't done until everyone here is made whole again. And I'm not holding my breath. If you were a business that walked its talk, that would be a given. But I live in the real world, not in La La Land. In the real world, when it goes wrong, and it does, the companies who make all these promises of safety lawyer up and scurry away like cockroaches when the kitchen light is turned on. The enemy isn't fracking. The enemy here is corporate spin. Now, I know this because I did this for 20 years for PricewaterhouseCoopers, before the Coopers, we were only Price Waterhouse back then. And when the Bank of Credit Commerce International, BCCI, tanked, I had one job: keep our name out of it, keep our name out of the news. And I did it very well. Right? This industry is smart. They figure they don't have to win the argument. Just being on this dais here is a win for every single one of them. Because they win by casting seeds of doubt. 97% of climate science, 97%, says we are burning and releasing too much carbon. This industry, though, funds the 3%, the fringe. This is how they win. They seem reasonable. They plant seeds of doubt. They win by buying the process. And when it all goes tits up, the kitchen light gets turned on, you get the bill. Every single one of them. Deep pockets purchase landowners, scientists, even lawyers to conflict them out of ever representing those with an opposing point of view. And remember Pennsylvania? There it's Penn State University researchers versus the University of Pennsylvania. And we're not talking on the football pitch. Industry-funded research is going to claim trillions of cubic feet. You just heard it here. There's 50 trillion cubic feet of gas right below the surface. Independent research says every single one of those claims is overstated by a factor of between 10 and 100 times. And so, Deepwater Horizon, folks, in the Gulf of Mexico, you travel abroad to the USA now, you're going to listen to an industry talking about, hey, the Gulf is back. It's wonderful. Come down to our beaches. Come eat our seafood. What you don't hear, the shrimp there are now born without eyes. And oil is still found in the salt marshes. But hey, party on, dudes. Shell wanted to drill in the Arctic until one rig ran aground and the second one actually broke down. They've both been towed back to Japan, and guess what? We're not going to be doing any drilling in the Arctic until the end of 2013. In Northern Ireland, UWC, remember that? They say there's 80 billion pounds in reserves under the countryside. Independent research says maybe 15. Now PwC is saying, well, it was just an estimate. Don't hold us to it. This still profess innocence. Earthquakes, oh, they're just a coincidence. Nothing is ever anybody's fault. Where is the corporate responsibility? Talk about 27 different chemicals in the fracking fluid. Most of them are identified. The biggest manufacturer of that fracking fluid is a company called Halliburton. Ever hear of them? They used to be run by somebody by the name of Richard Cheney. He was the Vice President of the United States. In 2005, he ordered the EPA to exempt fracking fluid from any inspections. So even if you want to know what's in those chemicals, you can't find out. He pressured them to stop. New York said no till 2015. Northern Ireland's on go slow, yet the Chancellor 2 days ago gave fracking the green light in his budget speech. Now, the three students responsible for putting that piece together that you just saw are joining me here in studio. There's Samia from Bangladesh, Mark from Belfast, and Rui from China. Welcome to. So tell me, how did the Sustainability Conference shape or change your view of this issue? Rui?
I would say it it really taught me a lot, because before coming here I was learning sustainability more from a Chinese point of view. But now in this Western society, I feel people are trying to get knowledge from two different perspectives. For example, here we invited the lady from Statsoil. I feel that is really interesting, because I've never heard anything saying from these oil companies. So it really taught me a lot.
Brilliant. And in Northern Ireland, Mark, you're seeing an emphasis on fracking and some other forms of gas extraction. What's happening there?
Yes, definitely. I mean, what they're trying to do is they discovered these, fuels underground, and they're trying to make the most money out of it, and gain an income for Northern Ireland as well as for the UK itself. But I think we really need to consider the effects of fracking on the environment, as well as the land could be used for golfing. We've loads of golf clubs, and building hotels, perhaps focusing more on the environmental factors as well as the economic income.
Brilliant. And Samaya, your country faces a lot with the rising seas in Bangladesh. What sorts of sustainability ideas have you gotten out of the conference?
Out of the conference, I would say it was more an eye-opening experience than it was something that changed my views. And related to back home, the government isn't doing a lot to deal with the rising sea level, and this was definitely a life lesson in what I can do back home in order to deal with things like the rising sea level, things like more sustainable methods of energy production, which definitely helped.
Now, all three of you played different roles on the video, which would have given you a different perspective. Let's start with you, Mark, because you were the cameraman and you filmed most of the conference. Tell us a little bit about the view from your side.
Yeah, it was definitely really interesting, because I felt like I was more a part of the whole debate. I was really focused on the people and what they were saying. So I actually remember most parts of the debate and what people said. So it really gave me a better insight into the interviews and the debates themselves. So.
Great. And Samaya, you had more of a production role, more of a producer role when it came to editing and putting the clips together. What was your view from?
I worked a lot with Daniel Hawkins, who was one of our keynote speakers, and he gave a speech on campaigning for the common good. So he spoke a lot of his organization, which is a 10-10 organization, looking to reduce carbon emissions by 10% in different organizations all over the world. And it was definitely an insight into realistic ways that our generation can actually achieve these goals.
Wonderful. And Ree, your role in the video was also from a more production side. What exactly did you take from it?
I found it really interesting, because the first thing we did was to listen to the watch the video again, try to pick some interesting moments, and it's I feel like when you hear that for the second time, I'm learning a lot more than the first time. And also by editing this, I feel like I'm trying to send out information to other people, so I'm actually helping other people learn more about sustainability. So I feel it's a really meaningful thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, the three of you, I have to ask you, as you head back for the summertime and look at your own countries, what are your plans? Let's start with you, Samaya. What future plans can you see in this area that you could help your own country?
Well, I hope to set up something at least, because in the most honest terms, back home in Bangladesh, we are not addressing the issue with the urgency that it needs to be addressed with. And most of the effort has been given by young people in our generation who are trying to make others aware, who are trying to push for sustainable methods now. And I would definitely look into joining them to help the cause.
Sure. And Rui, in China, that's a big nut to crack when you head back home, the government control as well as the current state of affairs. What would you want to do in the future in China?
Firstly, China has a lot of pollution problems, and I think probably here I want to say one about the one between UK and China, because I've just learned actually a lot of road rubbish can be recycled, are actually shipped to China to get recycled, then shipped back to UK. So I feel like this process, I feel like this can really be improved, because think about all the cost and pollution related to shipping process. Actually, this thing is really important. So I think for in the future I will work more on this part.
Brilliant. And Mark, Northern Ireland, what's the future there?
Well, I think sustainability in the UK generally is pretty well done. Like, we have different bins for plastics, different bins for like food waste and stuff, even in my house in Belfast. And but I generally think that it does, need to improve still, because old cars cause, the old cars fuel emissions cause a whole lot of trouble, especially in London and Belfast and greater areas in the UK. So we need to somehow, put focus on, perhaps getting rid of old cars, or, maybe getting some sort of specialized equipment to, reduce emission.
Thank you all for your fabulous work on this. I know it's a lot harder to do, to actually watch and put together an entire segment like this than to just put one little piece together. So great job and very well done. We'll be back after this. You're watching Worldview with Denis Campbell.